meeting. Thank you all for joining us. We have a quorum and we will begin. Tonight we are going to have our Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Rachel Waters, if you would come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Rachel is a student at McGavock High School. She's the president of the students' body. Thank you. McGavock High School. Thank you, Rachel.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rachel. And for those of you who are not aware, what we are starting to do is requesting that our board members suggest a student for each board meeting to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We are all about students, and it's time that we showcased our students as well. So thank you again, Rachel. We appreciate you coming out tonight. And we will move into student board member reports. Do you have a report this evening? No. Fantastic. One thing, too, I wanted to advise is that if you will look at the agenda, if you have a copy of the agenda, we've made a little bit of an adjustment. We're going to do announcements at the beginning of our meetings going forward as opposed to the end. We are all terribly afraid of losing an audience by the time we get to the announcements, so this is a great opportunity to start. And Ms. Spearing, we will start with you.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Instead of making announcements today, I'd like to bring my attention to the board to submit a motion for the April meeting, and I'd like to read the resolution. Mnps resolution for high-stakes testing. Whereas our nation's future and well-being relies on the high-quality public education system that prepares all students for college, careers, citizenship, and lifelong learning, and strengthens the nation's social and economic well-being, and whereas our nation's school systems have been spending growing amounts of time, money, and energy on high-stakes standardized testing in which student performance on standardized tests is used to make major decisions affecting individual students, educators, and schools, and whereas the over-reliance on high-stakes standardized testing in state and federal accountability systems is undermining educational quality and equity in U.S. public schools by hampering educators' efforts to focus on a broad range of learning experiences that promote the innovation, creativity, problem-solving, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking and deep subject matter knowledge that will allow students to thrive in a democracy and in an increasing global society and economy. And whereas it is widely recognized that standardized testing is an inadequate and often unreliable measure for both student learning and educators' effectiveness. And whereas the overemphasis on standardized testing has caused considerable collateral damage in many schools, including narrowing of the curriculum, teaching to the test, reducing love of learning, pushing students out of school, driving excellent teachers out of the profession, and undermining school climate. And whereas high-stakes testing has negative effect for students from all backgrounds, especially for low-income students, English language learners, students of color, and those with disabilities. Whereas what occurs in our classrooms every day should be student-centered and result in student learning at a deep and meaningful level, as opposed to a superficial level of learning that results from the current overemphasis on that which can be easily tested by standardized tests. And whereas the culture and structure of the systems in which students learn must change in order to foster engaging school experiences that promote joy and learning, depth of thought, and breadth of knowledge for students. And whereas our vision is for all students to be engaged in meaningful learning activities that cultivate their unique individual talents, provides for student choices in work that is designed to respect how they learn best, and embraces the concept that students can be both consumers and creators of knowledge. And whereas only by developing new capacities and conditions in our district will we ensure that all learning spaces foster inspiration and celebrate innovation, creativity, problem solving. Whereas these are the skills that business leaders desire in a rising workforce and the very attitudes that are essential to the survival of our democracy. And whereas imposing relentless test preparation and boring memorization of facts to enhance test performance is doing little more than stealing the love of learning from our students and assuring that we fall short of our goals. Whereas we do not oppose accountability in our public schools, but believe that the system of the past will not prepare our students to lead in the future. Neither will the standardized tests that so dominate their instructional time and block our ability to make progress towards a world-class educational system of student-centered schools and future-ready students. Therefore, be it resolved that Mnps calls on the governor, the state legislature, and state education boards and administrators to re-examine public school accountability systems in this state and to develop a system based on multiple forms of assessment which do not require extensive standardized testing, more accurately reflects the broad range of student learning, and is used to support students and improve schools. And resolved, MNPS calls on the U.S. Congress and administration to overhaul the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, currently known as No Child Left Behind, reduce the testing mandates, promote multiple forms of evidence of student learning and school quality and accountability, and not mandate any fixed role for the use of student test scores in evaluating educators. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beering. Ms. Shepherd.
I have none.
Mr. Pinkston.
Yes, Madam Chair. I had made motion at our February board meeting to bring a resolution or a motion at this meeting that would open up us to revisit our academic achievement policy. I have not yet perfected the language that I want to bring, and frankly, have not yet had enough conversations with folks in central office to be able to come with that, but I intend to bring that next month.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Hayes? Ms. Froh?
I have none.
Okay. I just have a couple of announcements. We will start with on Wednesday, March 13th, which is tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m. We will have a meeting here in the boardroom with the Antioch area members of the Metro Council, Mr. Pinkston and myself, to get an update on the pending school projects in the Antioch area. This is the pending projects for the middle school and elementary schools. And again, that will be tomorrow afternoon here at 4 o'clock in the boardroom. Thursday, March 21st at 5 p.m., we will have a reception in the boardroom with members of the Metro Council. March 25th at 1 p.m., Representative Brenda Gilmore, Chair of the Davidson County Delegation, has graciously invited this Board of Education to update the delegation on the potential impact of the current state legislation on Nashville's children. If any of you are able to make that, please let Ms. Hawkins know as soon as possible so that we can RSVP to Representative Gilmore. Also, we will have we had our first MNPS Project Expo. Students in MNPS regularly engage in project-based learning in all classes, where students go through an extended process of inquiry in response to a complex question, problem, or challenge. More than 300 students from 16 high schools will compete on Thursday, March 14th, which is this coming up week, at Trevecca Nazarene University Boone Convocation Center. I'm going to get this in a second, I promise you. Students will receive a gold, silver, or bronze or participation ranking based on scores from their project and interviews with a panel of expert reviewers. A public awards session and viewing will be open to the community from 6 to 7:30 p.m. on Thursday evening, and that's Thursday, March 14th, this week. One other announcement is tonight at 6 o'clock, bless you. Tonight, beginning at 6 p.m., the Crossings Nashville Action Partnership meeting will begin at 6 p.m. at the Crossings Event Center, and that is the CNAP meeting in the area, in the Antioch Cane Ridge Priest Lake area. One last thing before we move ahead, I would like to say a special hello to Mr. Kendall, our former board member, for joining us tonight. We appreciate you being here. Any awards and recognitions? I don't see any. We will move right into public participation. First up, Ms. Mahogany Vaughn. While she's coming, let me just say the board will hear from those persons who have requested to appear at this board meeting. In the interest of time, speakers are requested to limit remarks to 3 minutes or less. Comments will be timed. Ms. Vaughn?
On behalf of the dedicated educators across the district, I want to address the board regarding the district's lack of two-way communication, accountability, and trust. Talented educators are being harassed and intimidated out of the field for simply standing up and bringing attention to the district's impotent policies and non-compliance to the existing policies, such as the global executive constraint and your staff treatment policy. We all have our faults and flaws, but we also have expectations. Expectations of ourselves and expectations of the district for which we work. The expectations the teachers have of the district are just as high as the expectations the district has of its educators. And when educators take a stand to hold you accountable for meeting our expectations of you, a breach of communication has become an unexpected result. Hence the reason you don't have the participation you would like on the TEL survey. And ultimately, the greatest expectation we should have of each other is accountability. However, the refusal to accept accountability has become the greatest symptom of our school's failures and has brought about a plethora of other symptoms, such as distrust, apathy, and indifference. The district has a very critical issue sitting on its plate at this very moment, and the board has refused to follow protocol of addressing and investigating the situation. As a result, it has caused the students to go nearly 7 months without a certified special education teacher, taken and complicated what was a basic conflict resolution matter and compounded its impact. Consequently, the students have suffered, the teachers have suffered, and the district has suffered. Situations like these are prime examples of the hostile climate that prevents teachers from performing at their best, thereby affecting the academic growth of the student body. And after experiencing or witnessing how situations are not being investigated properly, teachers are reluctant to participate in anything they feel compromises their jobs, their performance, and their reputation. As long as the district refuses to take responsibility for its leaders who are responsible for the environment and climate of each school, situations will continue to escalate. Teachers will continue to lose faith in the system for which they work and, in essence, affect the academic growth of the student body. It is the responsibility of the board to ensure that teachers are equipped and afforded a healthy environment, and in turn, the educators afford a healthy learning environment for the students. No one likes their faults and mistakes and errors thrown in their face, but at the end of the day, we all have to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, did I do the right thing? We must be honest with ourselves and decide to make a change. So I'm pleading with you, the board, to take that look in the mirror, accept accountability, and restore the faith of its teachers.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Miriam, I'm not even going to attempt this last name, Becerra and Chelsea King, Academies of Nashville. Did I get the last name right?
Becerra?
Becerra?
Yes, ma'am.
That's nice.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Miriam Becerra.
And I'm Chelsea King. And I'm Alicia Camp.
The reason why we are standing here in front of you is to represent the Hospitality Academy of Glencliff High School. Since there are going to be some changes in it, where cosmetology is and we started a petition. We took the liberty to start a petition where we have received more than 450 signatures from students, that they include freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, and a few seniors that are supportive of the program, that they would like for it to stay, because we see that cosmetology isn't academic based, is not so much science and so much math, although it does include it, but some students don't have that in them, and they just want to be creative, and they want to showcase their talents in a different way. Sometimes a career in science or math isn't what they look for. They look for something where they could showcase their creativity and they could feel accomplished in their talents. And cosmetology is a great way of showing that, not only through nail technicians, but also in hairstyles and barbering. It's been a creative career. They do make good income. And our mission statement says that they would like to develop professional citizens in hospitality, culinary, and cosmetology. And I feel that we have done that. I feel that the students who take cosmetology, they learn how to communicate better. They learn to take pride in what they believe in and what their talent is, and they showcase that. Also, if with this program phasing out, this wouldn't allow any new students to take cosmetology anymore. So what would they have to do? They would have to pick a different academy that they don't feel so passionate about. They would have to take a different academy that they don't have it in their hearts to do. So that wouldn't push them to do good. That wouldn't push them to do their best. 8th grade students, they wouldn't, when they arrive to Glencliff and they see that hospitality and marketing isn't no longer on the academy list, I've talked to a few 8th graders and they feel devastated because they wanted to join the academy. They wanted to learn the talents that are required in that pathway. What we do a lot in cosmetology is that we like to get involved with our community. We actually go to Runner Towers every Christmas and every Valentine's Day, and we do manicures and we do pedicures, and for them that they stay there for hours and they don't receive many visitors, for them to know that we care and that we spend time just to dedicate a few hours of just pampering them, they appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Becerra, and others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Henry, MNEA and MNPS Collaborative Partnership. Ms. Becerra,
Ma'am?
if you could send a copy of your PowerPoint to the board administrator, I'd really like to take a look at that.
Okay, I also have the petition if you would like to see.
If you could send that to the office.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the board and Dr. Register. My name is Stephen Henry. I'm a middle school teacher with 27 years of service to the district and currently serve as president of the Metropolitan Nashville Education Association. First of all, I want to thank you and express my appreciation to so many of you who participated in our Read Across America events recently, and thank you for helping to make that day such a success and for what you do every day for our students and teachers. I'd also like to publicly thank Delta Dental of Tennessee and the Nashville Symphony for their partnership in that reading initiative, and hope you've had a chance to see some of the pictures from those events at Ross Warner and the Skimmerhorn Symphony Center, which involves students from Hattie Cotton, Tom Joy, Glenview, and Cole. At those events, every student received a Cat in the Hat book, a red and white stove pipe hat, a bookmark, a toothbrush, toothpaste, and a timer as part of Delta Dental's 2x2 plus 20 reading initiative, which encourages students to brush their teeth 2 times a day for 2 minutes and to read 20 minutes a day. Additionally, the libraries at Ross and Warner received $1,000. And this annual event is one example of the work that MNEA does year-round to support the work of the school system, our teachers, and students. MNEA and MNPS have been collaborative partners for a long time. MNEA was officially chartered in 1964 with the merger of the city and county governments and the creation of metropolitan government. Prior to that time, there were 2 school systems, and each of those, there were 2 teachers' associations, a white and black. Those 4 came together in 1959 and formed the Education Council. In 1964, they merged to form what is now MNEA. It was one of the first examples of integrated teacher organizations in the South, and with social justice as one of our core values, it's part of our history that we're very proud of. Also, those 4 organizations were involved, we know, at least until 1895. So we've been working with the district a long time. This past fall, in my letter to the supporting the district's Race to the Top grant application, I included the following, which pretty much sums up our philosophy of collaboration. The Metropolitan Nashville Education Association and MNPS enjoy a rich history as collaborative partners. This is an intentional approach which is focused on student achievement. Because of legislation by the Tennessee General Assembly, this cooperative dynamic is now rare throughout much of the state, but for us, it's how we choose to operate. For we know the best and only way to ensure student success and the success of our schools is by working together. MNEA and Mnps are doing our part in Nashville to lead the profession, to support public education, and most importantly, to meet the needs of our students. What we do matters, but how we do it, I think, is a real story. We are a model for the state and nation for what true collaboration looks like. For the past 2 years, and in recognition of our work, we were the only association and district in the state invited by the U.S. Department of Education to the Labor Management Collaborative because we value collaboration and we do it well. Also recently, NEA President Dennis Van Rokel uplifted the work that we're doing. We were one of 4 highlighted for the collaborative work at a national convention for educators. And that credit is due to the dedication of our MNEA members for the work that you are doing, Dr. Register, and members of his staff. I've listed some of the examples of the collaborative work that we are currently involved in. I won't read them all, but I want to highlight a few.
Well, actually, your time's up, but thank you.
Okay, all right.
We do have the document, so we will take a look at that. Thank you, Stephen. Governance issues, consent agenda. Ms. Shepherd.
1, approval of minutes of 2/12/13 regular meeting. B, recommended award of contract for soil and materials testing, Southern Consulting LLC, MBOE 13-001. 3, recommended award of contract for soil and materials testing, S&ME Inc., MBOE 13-002. Recommended award of contract for soil and materials testing, Beaver Engineering Inc., MBOE 13-003. Recommended award of contracts for soil and material testing, PSI Inc., MBOE 13-004. Recommended award of contract for roof replacement at Schwab Elementary School, Roofing Solutions and Services, MBOE 13-005. G, recommended award of contract for roof replacement at Glenn Elementary School, Roofing Solutions and Services Inc., MBOE 13-006. H, recommended award of contract for roof replacement at DuPont Elementary School, Roofing Solutions and Services Inc., MBOE 13-007. I, change order number 4 for Hermitage Elementary School additions and renovations, Dyer and Boger Construction Inc., M-449. J, change order number 1 for recording studio at Pearl-Cone High School, Southland Constructors LLC. K, recommended approval for Amendment A for prototypical playgrounds at various schools, parentheses, Lakeview Elementary, Custom Recreation Inc., L-2684. L, designer supplement number 3 for Cane Ridge Elementary School, EOA Architects L-2530. M, recommended approval of lease of Stokes site to Lipscomb University for parking. N, awarding of bids and contracts. Number 1, RNA Solutions Inc., Rhonda. 2, Belmont University, the Curve Event Center. 3, Lipscomb University. 4, Yaya and Rogers Company. 5, the Band Hall. 6, Chem Aqua Inc. 7, Aquaphase Inc. 8, Landscape Support Services LLC. 9, Middle Tennessee State University. D, DK Brand Strategy. 11, Headsprout Inc. 12, Leonard Stevens Consulting, Second Amendment. 13, CDW Government LLC. And 14, AT&T Corp. O, recommended approval of request for compulsory attendance waiver. P, final approval of diversity management plan. And Q, recommended approval of special courses, AP Cambridge Capstone Interdisciplinary Investigation and Critical Reasoning Seminar, AP/Cambridge Capstone Research Project. I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as read.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. And we will move into the director's report. Dr. Register.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We only have one item on the agenda for the director's report this evening, but it's not a small item. It's one that's occupying a great deal of our time, and several members of the board have been very actively involved in working with the legislature while it's in session also. I'm going to ask Hank Clay to start a presentation and discussion of legislative activity to give all board members an update, and would welcome comments and questions from board members, and also some discussion of each of you and your involvement in legislative action as we go forward. Hank, as you know, is in a position that has shifted responsibilities, and we're really glad to have Hank working with us. As a legislative and intergovernmental liaison, Hank, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Register, Madam Chair, members of the board. You have to forgive me, I have a cold and I have my mysterious voice on tonight. There has been a lot happening downtown at both ends. We'll start with some of the happenings at Metro Council. Our friends at Metro Council have recently taken several positions in support of the school district, and we'd like to thank them for that. One of those positions is support of our position as a school district on the school vouchers issues and charter schools authorizers. They've also supported our teachers through recognizing our 8 newly nationally board certified teachers, and have supported your position on the diversity plan. So I'd really like to thank Metro Council for that, our close partnership with them, and continuing to build on that relationship. At the other end of downtown, at the General Assembly, there's been a lot in the news recently. I'd like to talk first about some of the good things that are happening. Specifically, Representative Jason Powell has shown great leadership in trying to get more resources for our English language learner students through the BEP program. This bill that he has a very large fiscal note, and so isn't likely to pass, but is really bringing attention to a very specific need that our district has and other districts across Tennessee. And we hope that this attention will help to address that, maybe not this year, but in future years. There's also been some cleanup done on the evaluation, our teacher evaluation system through TEAM. The Tennessee Department of Education has partnered with SCORE and going around the state this past year and listening to some of the teachers' concerns and trying to incorporate those. We expected that this would help to clarify some of the issues that have come up, particularly around teachers that don't have an individual TBAS score. We need to be paying attention to a facilities bill that's coming down the pike. We've been trying to work with a sponsor on addressing some of our concerns with this, but that's just something to put on your radar as we move forward in this legislative session. One of the issues that we've had grave concerns about is the bill that's commonly known as the guns and trunks legislation. This bill would enable licensed handgun owners to carry those firearms in their locked vehicles on school grounds. We, as a district, under this law, would still be able to have a policy prohibiting that, prohibiting parents and teachers, but it would not have the criminal backing of it. And so that's something you as a board and we as a school district need to figure out how we're addressing in this changing environment, and we need to ensure the safety of our students in that. Another issue that's gotten a lot of press recently is the idea of school vouchers. There are several different bills on this subject this year. One is the governor's bill. The governor's bill would address students who are eligible for free and reduced price lunch, who are eligible to go to an ASD eligible school. Lots of eligibles in that. But it is, relative to some of the other bills, a little bit narrower in scope. Some of the other bills broaden that to a much larger population. We as a school district feel like the most resources that can go to educating all of our 81,000 students, the better, and that's why we're opposing those. One issue that has taken a lot of attention, particularly from you as board members, is the idea of the Charter Authorizer bill. This is House Bill 702. As you remember, it has been a long process in coming. It started off as a surprise amendment that targeted just Memphis and Nashville in establishing a state authorizer in which charter school applications can go around the LAA to the state authorizer. We have worked, and we thank the speaker for working closely with us on trying to address some of those issues. It has now been amended to be statewide, and it's been amended to go through the LA first. But there's still two major concerns that we have with this. One would be the idea of the fiscal cliff that this would create. We would like to build in some fiscal guardrails that would help to enable the district to plan for that certainty. The second thing is, in schools that are majority locally funded, we feel like those schools need to be accountable to you as the elected officials who are targeting your taxpayers. So those are a few of the bills that I pointed out. I'd be happy to answer any questions and write down and get back with you individually about other bills, but I'll turn it over to you now.
Any questions?
I do have a couple. Thank you, Hank. I appreciate that. In the Guns and Trunks bill that you were talking about, you made the statement that we as a district could opt out of that legislation. How could we do that?
Let me clarify slightly on that. We could not opt out of the legislation. What we could do is maintain a policy that would prohibit guns on campuses, but we would not be able to enforce that with the criminal penalty. So for example, we could fire an employee, but we would not be able to engage the police with that employee, and we would have less leverage over our parents, who of course we cannot fire parents.
Do you feel like we would be challenged on that?
From the legislative intent, well, we could definitely be challenged. The legislative intent on the House floor was that that would be allowed, and business owners and schools and universities would be able to have specific policies prohibiting that. So that's the legislative intent.
Okay, and I have one other one. I don't know the number of it, but Senator Stacey Campbell was supposed to have a bill in his education committee today, and I don't know the number of it. It's the Don't Say Gay bill. Do you know if that made it out of committee today or not?
That bill actually, the Senate Education Committee meets tomorrow.
Oh, I thought it was today.
The House, but that bill, the House side of that bill came up in Education Subcommittee for the first time today, and that meeting may still be going on, and I don't know if it made it out of subcommittee.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Frogue?
I wanted to ask about the changes to the teacher evaluations.
Yes.
Do you know any details on that yet, or is that?
They are very detailed, and I have the bill and would be happy to follow up on specific questions. Do you have a specific question, or is
No, I really hadn't heard much about that, so I just wanted to know.
I don't want to give misinformation, so let me follow up with you.
Okay, that's great.
Mr. Hayes?
I wanted to see if you could, and certainly thank you for spending all your time with the legislature. It must be
Fun.
I was going to say painful.
Yeah.
You know, I know they mean well. You mentioned that you're interested in, I guess, 2 points that are not currently in. It would be HB 720.
702, yes.
Or 702, fiscal guardrails to plan for certainty. I guess being the first one, and I was going to, I guess, hope you could walk me through the request, because my thought about this is that if it goes through local, if it goes through an appeals process, right, there's a pretty significant lead time, right? I mean, they go through our typical application cycle. It would go to some sort of a board that might hear it over the summer. Is that?
They're actually trying to tighten the time frame so that charters that are going through that appeals, it can happen more quickly. So there wouldn't be as much back and forth, but it could happen quickly.
So our process wraps June 15th, June 30th, and it could go through their process by July 30th, and so is roughly, right?
Roughly,
I mean,
yes.
roughly, and maybe it's August, but, and then theoretically, that group could get a charter awarded and open within 12 months, right? I mean, it would be impossible to get a facility, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be impossible. It would be incredibly difficult to get a charter approved, say, August 1st, when school for us may even start July 25th or August 1st.
If you're asking, yes, it is the next school year that
And so
would
what are we trying to tighten? I mean, we would have a whole year to plan. So if we needed to rezone or if we needed to close a school, you're saying that you're interested in a guardrail, are you asking for a limit or cap on the number? Or you're asking for more time? Or what are you trying to do to give us, because we would have theoretically a year to plan for this, or if there were 10 of them coming, right? We'd have a pretty significant amount of lead time to plan for it. What are we asking for?
Well, we're certainly not asking for caps. And if I may, perhaps I can defer to one of your fellow board members, Will Pinkston or Dr. Register, on that particular issue.
Yeah, so I'll take the first cut. So I've been involved at the chairwoman's direction in my capacity as the budget chair, and the short answer is there's not any specificity yet around ideas. You know, we're kind of have started, of course, in last week's budget committee meeting to advance the concept of, you know, how can we just build in or bake in some fiscal protections that protect us, you know, in an unexpected event. I can see a situation where a charter management organization would bring 10 schools, or in the case of one last year, 5 schools, so maybe it's 2 bringing 5 each. And, you know, at what point does it start to create a negative fiscal impact, potentially negative fiscal impact? I think great schools are going to cost money, and the ship can't turn on a dime. And so I think the question is not, you know, should we or shouldn't we be approving great schools, and we should, but the question is at what point and over what period of time do we have to adjust all of our other operational decisions? And I'd love to hear more thoughts from you on this. You've been looking at facilities a lot longer than I have, but I think the short answer is, Dr. Register, it's kind of up for debate, right? But we're just trying to prevent an unexpected fiscal event that has the potential to destabilize the budget through a single appeal.
And I guess where I'm going with that is I'm wondering if, aside from this piece where we have a year or 2 years to plan, and then the accountability piece, if there are other pieces that are out there.
Those are pretty big pieces.
Oh, right, but it's not like there's a date and it's March 1st.
Let me give you this. Let me give it,
well,
based on the meeting today, and let me give you my take on this.
Yes.
We talked about approving a budget for next year.
Right.
Our budget, the final process is going to be completed in April of this year. If, say, this bill had already passed and they have until August 1st to approve a new charter school, our budget's already approved for next school year. So on August 1st, when they start talking about that school that's approved, and they're going to open that following August, in the school year that we just approved, we're looking at a significant difference in financial loss for the students that are going to be in that new charter school. So it's going to be very critical that we understand how this process works. We could stand to lose. You know, right now we're looking at probably a growth of about 1,500 to 1,800 students into our traditional public schools over the next school year. We're looking at about a $40 million transfer of funds from our budget to the charter school budget for next year. The influx is going to be between 13 and 16 million. The outflow is going to be 40 million. We're looking at about a $24 to $27 million shortfall just for next year. So if we approve our budget in April of this year, and then a school is approved in August of this year for opening the following year, where's the additional capital going to come from? That's what makes this a big issue.
Right, and my thought, right, you just said it, so we have a whole year to plan.
We have a year to plan, but if the budget's
Right.
already approved, where are you going to get the additional funding?
So we're approving, with your example, we're approving a budget now for the 13-14 cycle, and if that school was approved in August of 13, it would open in August of 14.
But where's the additional funding going to come from is my question to you.
Maybe there isn't additional funding. Maybe we have to actually realign, so we would close a facility, or we would not hire as many teachers.
And you expect that would be able to be done in a year?
Well, my question really is what's the compromise? What are we asking for?
Oh.
Right? What do we've said we're asking for a guardrail from a physical cliff. What are we asking for specifically? What else? What do we not have alignment with on this bill? So to the extent that you're negotiating with somebody, what's the ask? That's the question. What exactly are we trying to negotiate?
I think the step one is getting people, whether they're in the legislature, the council, the community at large, whoever, to accept the idea that charter schools or anything that is approved on an appeal is by definition an unexpected event for us and has the potential to have a fiscal impact. Now, charter schools that we approve go into an integrated budget and strategic planning process. We, open or help them open just like we would open a new school, and we plan for it accordingly. But I think step one is just to get everybody sort of rowing in the same direction, if you will, on the notion that this could have a destabilizing effect on the budget if it's not handled properly and with care. And I think from that point, the conversation really is, okay, what does a guardrail look like? And I think Hank is doing a great job, as is class and as is Dr. Register and Amy, our advocacy chair, just communicating the reality of the situation, that this does have a fiscal impact. It's surprising that there are some people in the legislature who just don't think that's the case. And I think getting past step one, convincing people that we're not playing with monopoly money over here, that this is real life, and we're dealing with students in existing schools that still deserve our attention as well. Getting everybody to realize and accept that is the first step in having a more nuanced conversation about what a guardrail.
And the bigger picture is here, is I think this started out, just like Hank said, it started out being two major counties in Tennessee, Shelby County and Davidson County. This thing has gone statewide. So the impact that we're going to feel is going to be felt across the entire state. So the questions, and I commend you for that, the question should be asked of every county in this state: how is it going to impact you, and what do you want to see happen in this bill? Other than just saying that, we need the fiscal impact, other than just accountability. We can't answer the question for the entire state, but we can answer it for this district. We need to sit down and come up with those answers.
Right, so that's my question is,
Yeah.
right, so to the extent that, as Hank just said, they're trying to accelerate it and compress the timeline, and as you said a second ago, we can plan for it. They would be approved theoretically 15 or 30 days after our approvals process, so instead of having 12 months, we have 11 months to plan for it. That gets back to specifically what are we asking for?
Well, yeah, so we're not asking for anything yet other than people to buy into the concept of large or districts of any size need some fiscal protection baked into this process. Not there yet. I think there are some people who legitimately want to force as many schools into existence as possible without regard to what it costs local taxpayers. It's literally a situation where you're trying to get people bought into the notion that, hey, let's be careful, because I think this could happen in a very careless way if we don't have that first conversation.
Absolutely. Any other questions, Mr. Hayes?
I'd love for just a broader, more, right, I'm just curious on the things that we're advocating for, because it seems as if between Hank's efforts, Dr. Register's efforts, there's been a lot of movement within the bill, right? It started off, I think we can all agree, not in the greatest fashion. It wasn't written as well perhaps as it could have been.
That's an understatement.
But it seems to be, right, a lot of the accountability pieces have moved in our direction. There are a lot of ways that it has moved towards us, but the second piece is what specifically are we asking for around in schools that are, you said in schools that are majority locally funded, they would be accountable to us instead of to the authorizer.
Yeah, and that is a clean, bright line that I think we can draw around a very specific position. We first articulated this last week in the Budget Committee meeting, but we have the fourth lowest percentage share of BEP dollars in the state. We're at something like 23% fewer, 23% less than the average district in terms of the amount of our education system that's funded by the state versus the local level. Another way to put that is Davidson County taxpayers fund 2/3 of public education here. It's hard to envision, in my opinion, a situation where we don't have the ability to oversee those schools and monitor those schools that are not just majority locally funded, but almost supermajority locally funded. So regardless of how they come into existence, I think we have not just an obligation to students, but also a fiduciary obligation to Davidson County taxpayers to make sure that we have the ability to monitor and oversee, close if needed in the future if things aren't going so well. So I feel strongly about that particular piece of it, but would love to hear other views.
I can't necessarily have a view. I'm curious, maybe Dr. Register, you could chime in, or Mr. Coverstone, if that might lead to if there's been any discussion, if that would lead to a toxic environment, right? So to the extent that the state approves somebody over us, that from the outset, it's a contentious relationship.
I'm very supportive of local accountability, and in fact, I think the toxic environment would be much more likely to occur if there's a complete separation and no interaction between the charter schools and the district. And in terms of oversight or accountability, we're talking about the same kind of relationship we have with the charter schools now. We don't tell them how to run or what to do, but we do look at the student achievement data, and I think we have a responsibility to do that for the students who live in Davidson County. So I'm very supportive of that concept. I think some of the conversation's been around whether the language should say shall or may. Some school systems, there may be some districts that would want to opt out of that and take a hands-off position. I think these children live in Davidson County, and they're our children, and they attend public schools, public charter schools in Davidson County, so I would hope we would have some accountability as we go forward.
I think the key here to remember is that they are all our children, regardless of what kind of tug of war is going on in the legislature. These are all our children, and we have to do absolutely our best to make sure that they are educated to the best of our ability.
So far as fiscal cliff's concerned, I think Mr. Pinkston expressed very well some similar concerns that I have. Are there any parameters? And as we make decisions about charter schools, I think fiscal impact is something that we can consider. We're approving 5 this year. The cost for that, the outflow of funds for that, is an additional $15 million to our budget. And I look at it as that there should be some parameters set by a state authorizer, parameters or guardrails, if you will, guidelines, if you will, about the future going forward. And I don't see, I'll say also, I don't see caps in that regard. But are there guardrails or parameters, and should we address that? And I've been in the education committee meetings too, and my concern has been that there really hasn't been any discussion of fiscal impact, and there really needs to be. You know, we need to be responsible for local taxpayer dollars and state taxpayer dollars in terms of having that discussion and being reasonable in what we approve as we go forward.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like, you know, if what and let me back up and reiterate something that Hank said, which is I think Speaker Harwell has done a great job listening to the early concerns that were expressed and being flexible in terms of having conversations with everybody who's interested in the issue. And I think as you see the bill morphing, it is getting, it's headed in the right direction, right? We are moving toward what essentially is a refined appeals process, which is, you know, conceptually a good thing. It puts more certainty in the system in terms of what happens at every step in the process. It kind of eliminates this sort of ping pong back and forth between the state and the local district, which was always confusing to me, just even before I got on the board, watching how that process played out. So I think, you know, conceptually it actually looks like what happens in other states, but I think if the goal is to create a process and a system that's more predictable, not just for charter operators, but for districts, then I think it's, you know, I think we have to have the conversation around fiscal impact, because it's bad for everybody if we get into a situation where it has a one appeal or a series of appeals has a destabilizing effect on the budget. That's bad for existing charters that are in the system, because that puts a strain on existing resources potentially. So I think just moving really carefully is the responsible thing to do academically and financially. And what it looks like, I'm open to it. I know everybody else is.
Just to piggyback on something you just said, I mean, I completely agree. I have no problem with fixing the appeals process. I think we could have gone about that in a lot of different ways. And, I personally am opposed to any form of this bill just because, as I think the best line I heard, I've been at the legislature a lot last several weeks, and one of the legislators said this is a solution looking for a problem. I don't see any reason to take away local control, and particularly when it was focused just on us, because I've mentioned we're approving more than the national average of charter schools. Our charter schools are outperforming the national average. We have one underperforming charter school that was opened at the behest of the state. But having said all that, where we are now, I'm happy that we're moving forward and that we are getting some concerns addressed. But I think that, just to kind of echo what everyone's been saying, there's a real danger here financially to our districts. And I've been sort of thinking about what happens if we end up with a lot of schools that we can't afford. And I guess, I've mentioned there's a potential for a tax increase. Or we could end up taking away resources from schools that desperately need them. We could end up closing a lot of schools. There's really just a huge danger unless we get some sort of assurances. So that's what, I agree with everyone that we need to have a few more steps to feel that this is a good, tight bill that's a good fit for all of us. And I think there's there's a lot of room for discussing what that looks like.
I just want to acknowledge Ms. Frogue. She has spent a lot of time at the legislature these last few weeks, and I just want to say thank you, Amy, for all you've done.
And I've got a couple of questions related to this guns and trunks bill. Scares me to death.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Before we switch topics.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I was trying to make eye contact. You were ignoring.
I'm sorry. I was not ignoring Dr. Gentry, for the record. Go ahead, I'm sorry. I may pay for it now, but I wasn't then.
No, so I just keep getting flashes of the discussion we ended up having about diversity and then what we did, and it seemed that we were in reactive mode. And all I just want to suggest that if this bill folded tomorrow, what it is that we need to do shouldn't change. We should have had the capacity issue around charter schools a long time ago. It's a drain on us. It's exacerbated by this bill, obviously, but it's a strain on the district every time, in some way, shape, or form, that we approve a charter school. And so the capacity, and this is really what it's about. We have this discussion about throwing terms out at this board table that only the 9 of us or 10 of us understand. It's not about guardrails or about caps. It's about what we have the capacity to manage and support as a district. And so we need to have that discussion regardless of what happens with this bill. And this just becomes information that we feed to the legislatures for consideration. And it's beyond, the fiscal part of it, again, has been highlighted for obvious reasons, but it's even about what our needs are when it comes to charter schools. So I hope that's one thing I did not hear get mentioned this time around, but that ought to be some of what we get added to that bill as well. It's not about having a charter school for the sake of having a charter school, but having a charter school that fills a need within Nashville-Davidson County. And so it's academic from that standpoint. Where are our needs? What is the population of our students that we need some support in servicing? And then it becomes, then how much can we afford from a capital perspective, from an infrastructure perspective? This central office still provides support to our charter schools that I think most people are totally unaware of, that we do not charge. We don't pay our staff anymore for doing it, nor do we charge the charter schools for the benefit that they receive from it. So I think it's a much bigger discussion, again, one that needs to happen regardless of where this bill is headed. Again, if they wiped it clean off the table on tomorrow, I hope we don't rest on our laurels so that we're caught unawares the next time that something like this comes around, as we have done in the past.
And that goes kind of to what I was saying earlier today, that right now, and Mr. Pinkston, you can speak to this as well. When we looked at the proposed budget for next school year, we're already looking at a shortfall of between 24 and 27 million based on our projected growth for next year. And you're absolutely correct. We are behind the curve right now. We should have already been ahead of it based on what we already know. But it could get potentially worse if we don't plan for it. I agree 100% with you, Dr. Gentry. If this bill were not in existence, we should have already been thinking about things like this. So, and this is, again, what I was speaking to earlier when I looked at the projected growth in our traditional public schools versus the funding that will be sent to charter schools, not could be, but will be sent to charter schools, we still have a shortfall of nearly between $25 and $30 million, and that's scary. If we have that shortfall every year, how are we going to continue to educate our children? That's scary for me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. Are you done?
I just agree 1,000% with what Dr. Gentry's saying. If we could somehow figure out a way to more actively, proactively communicate to the charter market what we expect and what we need in Nashville, whether that's, we have capacity pressures in certain part of the county, we could actually use additional capacity in some areas, whether we have needs for more STEM education opportunities, whether there are some charters, out in the field that do an especially good job handling delivery of educational services to young new Americans. Those are conversations that are worth exploring, and that you don't really see the charter movement raising their hands saying, hey, how can we help you? Instead, what you see is a long line of prospective operators outside the door saying, we're bringing this school here, and give us a check. And that's not a very collaborative way to approach things. So I think we can do better on all sides, having a more realistic, rational conversation about what the future looks like.
Now I bet you are so sorry that you had to get up here tonight, aren't you?
Not at all. My pleasure.
I do have a question about this guns and trunks bill, and like I said, it scares me to death. Because if I understand, I know we can create a policy that basically says we don't allow guns in cars or trunks on MNPS property.
That's correct.
So explain to me the criminal penalty that you talked about. What exactly is that? For instance, if we have someone who is in our facility and they have a gun, even outside the policy in their trunk, hypothetically speaking, if they have a gun in the trunk and for some reason they just go out and get it, how do we protect ourselves? And I just need to understand more about criminal penalty. What does that exactly mean?
Yeah, that's a great clarifying question, Madam Chair. So the criminal penalty applies to keeping the gun locked in the vehicle out of sight. There is still definitely a criminal penalty for taking it out, for having the vehicle unlocked, for anything at all that you would describe. If a person, even if they were lawfully carrying it, had it out of their vehicle, then there would be a criminal penalty associated with that.
Okay, and how does MNPS play into that? Because I'm sensing that there's some sort of breakdown between what our policy states and what the law will actually do to back us up.
You are absolutely correct about that. There's definitely a breakdown. This law also contradicts another state law in effect of zero tolerance for our students, because we have students in our non-traditional schools who are 21 and above, therefore eligible to have a handgun carry permit, and therefore eligible to have a handgun in their vehicle, in their locked vehicle. So there's several things that we're going to have to figure out, that the state is going to have to try to figure out throughout this process. Luckily, we have a new chief of school security that we can work with to draw upon his expertise about how to best protect our students. And as we're addressing this, and I know Mr. Tony Majors is very much aware of this, trying to think about how he's building how we're building our employment policies and our student policies as well.
So the way I understand the law is that, or the proposal is that we can pass a policy that denies parents or employees the right to bring a gun onto school property in a locked trunk. No longer will it be a criminal offense to do so. That's accurate. So you're not breaking the state law if you do that.
You're just breaking
You're
policy.
violating our policy, and I think that's the distinction.
That's correct. And our teeth there would be being able to fire an employee, but we don't have that same teeth with other populations.
Here's what's interesting to me. There was just recent, there are always some sort of incidents in the news. It's really interesting to me. I heard a young lady say that she had a restraining order against a former husband to keep him away from her property. But he came to the property anyway and attacked her. Now here's what's interesting to me. Policy is as good as the paper it's written on. if you have somebody who has a gun in their trunk, how are you going to know that? If for some, and that's why it scares me, because we have kids in our schools every single day. What happens if one of our employees or one of the visiting parents or one of the students decides they've had enough of whatever the situation is? You don't even know that gun's in there. And what are you going to do, to go out and waive your policy and say you can't do that? That's why this scares me, because it continues to put our children and our staff in jeopardy. So that's why I wanted to get some clarity on this. I really hope that before, or if, I hope it fails, period. I hope it just goes away like, up in the air. But in the event that it does not, we really need to be very mindful of how we craft policy, how we, across the board, how we look at this whole bill, because it's very scary. It's very scary indeed.
Madam Chair, you're exactly correct. As Dr. Register said recently, if there is not a gun on school property, then there's a very slim chance that it can go off.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And to clarify, it's passed both the House and Senate, and it's on the governor's desk, awaiting his signature now.
I think I'll give him a call and say thanks. Mr. Hayes.
I wanted to circle back to vouchers. You really glossed over vouchers and kind of where we are and what we're talking about. I think you said, well, we're talking about it. I've had some pretty significant concerns around the amended legislation that really opens it up, around the $74,000 income cap. Can you talk more about the proposal as it stands today and the process? And I guess to kind of further that, I think a lot of our private schools are a majority of them in Davidson County are at capacity, but that's anecdotal. I haven't called all the ones to say how you doing, right? But I guess I've had some concern with the notion that this could attract a private operator to the state to open multiple schools, and a $74,000 income cap really would open it up to most of our student body, a high percentage. Right, if we're 71% FRL, you could maybe infer that 80% could be under the $74,000 cap. Can you talk more about how this is weaving its way through? What your task is, right? How have you been negotiating this process, and results that we might expect? And then second, what's the way the voucher language is moving, what sort of accountability pieces are out there for private schools that would take voucher dollars as the legislation sits today?
Mr. Hayes, lots of excellent questions. I did not intend to gloss over it. It's a very serious issue that I'm happy to address some of those things. So first, there are at least two major voucher proposals right now. One of those is the governor's proposal. I'm sure you remember that this issue came up during last legislative session. The governor asked them to hold off and let them study it this past year. That process occurred, bringing together various educational stakeholder groups. The governor then brought his proposal. His proposal limits it to students who are eligible for free and reduced price lunch, students who are eligible, though not necessarily attending, an ASD eligible school. So that does not limit it to just ASD schools, but schools that are eligible to be an achievement school district. It limits it to the state and local portion of the BEP. So for example, Metro Nashville Public Schools goes above and beyond that. It would limit it just to that portion. Those funds would be withheld from the school district for any voucher participant in that school district, and then given to that private school. The private
$7,000, not that. What? How much?
I believe it's $6,400.
So roughly.
Roughly $6,400. And students who were to accept that voucher, if the private school to accept those students would have to accept that as payment in full. So for example, if their tuition, let's just assume it was $6,400, if their tuition was $7,000, they wouldn't be able to ask for an additional $600 from the parents. Today, the bill was amended to include students who are eligible for free and reduced price lunches for those students to help provide equity. And so that's the large portion of the governor's. It limits it to 5,000 student available vouchers in the first year. And private schools, of course, have the option of participating in this. They have the option of limiting the number of spaces in all different ways you can imagine that. Private schools would have to have I believe the term is norm reference test. It wouldn't necessarily be TCAP. It could be TCAP. It could be another test such as the ITVS or something like that. We have some concerns with that because we want to be comparing apples to apples. And more importantly, we want parents who would presumably be making these choices in the best interest of their students to be able to have apples to apples comparison. So when you try to develop a growth measure, we are concerned about how long it would take to be able to develop that growth measure for the students and the parents to know whether they're really getting a value on their money. So that's one proposal.
And so within that, there's one test or a couple of tests that happen while that student is enrolled in the school, or it's just it's an entry test or an exit test, or what?
That would be akin to the TCAP that our students go through. So something like that would be able to demonstrate growth for that student, the impact that teachers had on that student, things like that.
And are we saying just no, we don't like any voucher proposal, or are we trying to advocate for certain positions within the voucher legislation?
Well, our position is that we want as many resources as possible to go to educating all 81,000 of our students. And so just as we had a conversation around the charter schools, there's a real cost associated with that. And again, we're wanting amazing educational opportunities for all of our students. And that's what we're coming back to. If you looked at Senator Chairwoman Gresham, who's chair of that Senate Education Committee, she also has another bill that would be more expansive. I'm not quite as familiar with all those details. The governor has asked that his bill not be amended through the process, and he's, of course, leaving it to the wise discretion of the General Assembly as to which bill they decide to pass, whether it's more expansive or more limited. And so our position is no vouchers, but we would prefer the more limited version if something were to pass.
So help me kind of walk through this. Let's just say that the governor's bill passes, as an example. A family could elect to apply to a private school. They could be accepted to the school, the child could be accepted, and the child could go. And while the child is there, there would be some norm-based testing that would occur, correct?
Correct.
And then the child would theoretically matriculate and graduate through the program. But to the extent that it's a private organization who doesn't, and one of the things that I really like about the charter is the fact that, our board, we have a contract with another board of directors.
Correct.
Who can then hold, their school leader and teachers accountable.
Correct.
And there's some accountability there.
Correct.
But with the private school, they could just go, and we would have no sense whatsoever of performance really until it's way too late, right? The kids have gone all the way through.
That's correct. The philosophy of the legislators is that it would be the parent's responsibility to be able to determine whatever's best. That's correct.
And this legislation allows charters operate in the state of Tennessee as nonprofit corporations. This allows for-profit private school operators to have schools and have students apply.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure whether it would allow for-profit private schools or not.
Is there any definition of what a private school is? So can an out-of-state conglomerate, if such a thing exists, that's
a great question.
And with one of with Ms. Fingerroot here, we had spoken when she moved to Tennessee about fears of charter authorizers in the state of Tennessee versus Florida, where for-profit charter operators were open. And I'm sorry to call you out, but I wasn't terribly familiar with the for-profit charter world. Something about the for-profit private education world. I don't know if there are lots of these companies around the country that operate networks of schools. And so does it motivate people to open for-profit schools here?
Mr. Hayes, I think that's a great question, one that I don't have the answer to right now.
So we're advocating for just no authorizers?
That's
Is that
correct.
really the position?
No vouchers.
No vouchers, right. I guess it's something I felt we haven't collectively as a board talked about all that much.
We've been busy with charter
I've
authorizers.
felt
yeah.
personally that the voucher piece could be much more destructive.
I think you're absolutely, I don't know if it could be much more destructive, but I think it could be just as destructive accountability-wise, especially because we have no visibility on what they're learning or how they're being tested or, you know.
Well, and there's a regardless of who you apply to, right, with the current legislation, to the extent that you have to apply through us and go through a pretty serious process with Mr. Coverstone's office of Innovation, maybe go to the state, right? There's a high bar to entry to open a school. It's not an easy process. With the voucher process, it's pretty easy for a company to come in here and say, I'm opening a school. And look at what we're going to do. Don't you want, whether it's true or not, don't you want to come to my awesome, beautiful school? Look at how, and they could show scores, they could show all sorts of things. And I don't mean to be the working from a place of fear, but it seems to have had really little attention within our board or within the media, the potential destabilizing effect of significant, particularly the expansion in the voucher legislation, which is why I was curious. You didn't really talk about it, and we haven't really talked about it much.
And I will say that although we may not have talked about it extensively on this board, it has had a lot of media attention, and it has had a lot of attention in the legislature. It may have, I liken it to one of those things where, you know, it's the lesser of the evils. If we concentrate on the charter authorizers, maybe we can squeak that voucher bill by. But I think it has had a lot of tension in the legislature. Not probably as much as the charter authorizer, because it is what it is. You know, we have a bigger fiscal impact with charter authorizers than we do with the vouchers. And I think that's probably why it has taken precedence over the vouchers.
There may be other questions, which I'm happy to entertain.
Any other questions?
But
I just had a comment, but you go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
no, please.
I was just going to talk, one thing that sort of struck me in listening to everybody talk at the legislature is there's just this word choice is just thrown about wildly. And when you're talking about vouchers, the choice can be somewhat the parents, but the real choice is at the admissions office of the private school. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, following up on some of your comments, you know, we already know that a lot of the better private schools here are not interested in accepting vouchers. You know, so I am concerned about the quality of the schools that might be accepting them, what schools might spring up, you know, as a result of us having vouchers. And, you know, particularly if the governor's proposal goes through, I suspect that a lot of good schools are not really going to want to try to educate the populations that would come to them through vouchers, because these are difficult populations to educate. They need extra resources. They need a lot of focus that some private schools are not going to give. So I've really not heard anyone counter the idea of choice. It sounds fine in a bubble, but but what does that choice mean for a parent? I mean, does that mean really a high quality education? And so
for me, it got back to the fact, if you have a private school open that doesn't have an accountability structure like ours, they could attract a student and not give all the services because they don't have to show growth. Mm-hmm. They just have to attract kids and make money.
Right.
And that's a...
Mr. Pinkston.
Yeah, I just want to, it's more of a comment as much as anything else, but just to piggyback on something Ms. Frog was saying, you know, anybody who asks, you know, probing, analytical, quasi-critical questions about any of these issues, whether it's vouchers, as Mr. Hayes is doing, or whether it's asking critical, probing questions about fiscal impact around charter schools, you know, we are immediately declared as somebody who is against choice. You know, the minute you ask a tough question, sorry guys, you know, but we're going to ask tough questions. But how much choice do we actually have in the system right now, Dr. Register?
1 out of 4 students.
Magnets, charters,
That's correct.
everything else. So we're going to continue to talk about choice, but we're going to continue to talk about taking care of what we have to take care of and the kids who are in the system.
Ms. Kim?
Thank you. Yeah, I guess this is just a broad comment. I mean, possibly riffing a bit on what you were saying, Dr. Gentry, earlier, and then building off a few other comments. I mean, it seems that, like we need a comprehensive strategy that is rooted first and foremost in holding ourselves accountable to student growth and achievement. Because the reality is that people, like all this talk, whether it's around vouchers, charters, charter authorizers, who's going to authorize what, who has control over what, I mean, these wouldn't even be discussions. If people would not be clamoring for options, charters, or magnets with wait lists of hundreds and hundreds of kids collectively across the system, unless they wanted the options. And so, yes, the discussion now is revolving around vouchers and charters and budgets, because those are the sort of the hot topics, and they're the things to talk about, not just in Nashville but nationwide. But it seems that we have to grapple with the fact that kids and parents would not be choosing these options, advocating for them, gunning after them, unless they wanted them. And so the question for me is, and I'm not presuming that I have any kind of answer, even a sense of like, okay, exactly, this is how it should work, but it seems to me that we need to direct our thinking and action on any number of fronts, from budget to planning and more, to ensure that we provide more desirable options faster for our communities. And it's centered around student growth and achievement. And I know we all want great schools. I think most of us, are pretty agnostic about what they're labeled, whether it's charters or magnets or traditional schools. But I do think the accountability sits like squarely in the center of all of that, is that, I think we are going to face, tough choices and decisions. And all this discussion about what's happening on the Hill, what's happening everywhere across the city, it just seems to me that my own sense of urgency is increasing about really replicating what we already know works. Because we do have proven schools, we have bright spots in the district, and the question is, are we going to scale those up, hold ourselves accountable to making that widely available and, for our kids and our communities? This is a general thought. It's really nothing to do precisely about vouchers and charters, but yeah. And then it seems that aligning resources and, all of our strategic decision-making and action is just all aligned in that, regardless of what's happening around us.
Ms. Shepherd?
I think that some of the demand that you speak of is generated on the state level. I think some of that is coming down to us because it's the popular thing for some of our legislators to do. They think that it's because it's a hot topic item, it's a hot button item. Oh, well, then this is what I need to do for my constituents. I'm not sure that there is a lot of demand there is some demand, but I think a lot of it is generated. Just like sometimes the media generates interest to a particular topic because it's the thing to do. It's the hot button item. So I'm thinking that some of these issues are falsely generated, for lack of a better word. And yes, you're right. We do want all of our schools to be excellent, and we do need to be in front of the 8 ball on that. And I think that we are going in the right direction. We just need to be a little faster.
Any other comments? Well, let me say thank you very much, Hank, because you do a fantastic job, and we really do appreciate it. And thanks to Ms. Frog and Mr. Pinkston and everybody who has been on the Hill in the last couple of months talking about these issues. Thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll probably hit you up with some more questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just say in closing that although a majority of the attention is focused on a few issues, the majority of my time is actually built in a very encouraging way, spent in a very encouraging way on helping to build a strong sense of collaboration. And I'm really optimistic as we put issues aside that we can find much broader common ground on which to build and to drive that student achievement.
Thank you so much. And feel better.
Thanks.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Hank, thank you for that short report. I want the only other part of the director's report I have is I want to recognize some parents and one student who are with us tonight from Haynes Middle School. Catherine Wilburn, are you in the back there?
I think she may have left.
Oh, she may have left,
Yeah.
okay. I thought maybe she was still back there, but we had a group of parents earlier who were here from Haynes Middle School.
She'll be back. I've asked her back to lead the pledge for us one day soon.
Okay, terrific. That concludes my report.
Perfect. All right, we will move into committee reports. Youth Safety Summit, Ms. Shepherd.
Thank you. The clock is ticking. The Youth Safety Summit is right at 4 weeks away. We last met on Friday, March the 1st. The third annual Youth Safety Summit will be on Saturday, April the 6th. Our keynote speaker again is Craig Scott from Rachel's Challenge. He is the brother of Rachel Scott, who was the first person killed in the Columbine tragedy. On the day of the Youth Safety Summit, registration will begin at 8:30. The presentation will begin around 9 and will be followed by a question and answer session. Our breakout sessions will begin at 11 and end around noon. Tony Majors is not here tonight, but he has arranged for some great breakout sessions and facilitators. Light refreshments will be served. We will, the flyer is on the screen right there. We will be distributing this flyer. It will go home to all students in grades 5 through 12. And this is a free event for our students and parents. Childcare will be provided for the younger students attending. We are planning for some satellite transportation. We will begin online registration, as well as you can call in to the board office and register as well. We encourage pre-registration, but we do not want you to let that stop you from attending the event if you did not have the opportunity to pre-register. I want to say a huge thank you to Nissan for being the presenting sponsor, for their generosity in bringing this program to our parents and students. And I want to thank everyone who's helping make this event a successful one. We have a lot of people involved in this initiative. I would encourage my colleagues to make plans to be there for the day. It's just a half a day, so it won't be that painful to be there for half a day. Our next meeting for this event will be this coming Friday, March the 15th at 7 a.m. Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
I want to add one thing to your report, Ms. Shepherd. You talked about Rachel's Challenge, and I have seen this presentation. And for anyone who has not seen this presentation, you will not want to miss it. It is probably one of the most powerful presentations I have ever seen in my history. We had an opportunity to see this last summer, and in a room full of nearly 200 people, when we walked away, we were all blown away. I encourage parents to bring their students. I encourage parents to attend this event. It is probably one of the most, again, powerful presentations I've ever witnessed in my life. So thank you for that presentation, or your report. Budget and Finance, Mr. Pinkston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Immediately preceding this school board meeting, the Budget Committee met and continued our discussion that began a week ago about the proposed FY 2013-14 operating budget. There were no substantive changes presented at this Budget Committee meeting, this evening's Budget Committee meeting, but Mr. Henson has continued to make himself available to the individual members of the board to answer questions. We'll continue next week with, on Tuesday, April 2nd, for the public. At 5 o'clock, there will be a public hearing on the proposed 2013-14 operating budget, followed by a Budget Committee meeting to continue our discussion. The final step in the process, presumably, will be Tuesday, April 9th at 3:30. We will have final discussion at the committee level and approval, hopefully, at that time of the 2013-14 proposed budget. And then the budget hearing with the mayor is set for April 12th. So just to recap the next 3 dates: Tuesday, April 2nd at 5 o'clock, public hearing in this room. Tuesday, April 9th at 3:30, final discussion and hopeful approval of the proposed budget. And April 2nd, which I believe is a Friday, right, is the budget hearing with the mayor in the morning. I think it's set for 9 a.m., but we'll confirm that date and report back at the next opportunity. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Hayes, capital needs.
The Capital Needs Committee has not met in the, I guess, since our work session 2 weeks ago. I do not have an update for Capital Needs Committee other than we likely will be calling a committee meeting sometime within a week or two after the spring break. And I will coordinate with Ms. Hawkins to make sure everybody can attend.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
The board chairman's report tonight centers around a campaign that was launched recently by the TSBA, Tennessee School Boards Association. It is called Local Schools for Local Decisions. If you have noticed, you'll see that we are wearing the little red teardrop type stickers. We also have these little fans here. And I want to read you a little bit about this campaign so that it gives you a little bit more information about what this campaign is about. The Tennessee School Boards Association launched a statewide campaign, Local Schools, Local Decisions, in February 2013 to increase awareness of the importance of local control in public schools. Historically, communities have supported local lay school boards to make certain that local schools serve the community effectively and equally. The campaign focuses on maintaining the collective belief that public education should not be allowed to become a tool of any single group or person, that education exists to serve all people equally. Support for a strong system of public education is crucial. It is the backbone of our democracy and has made our nation a leader in the world. When I learned about this campaign back last month in February, it took me by storm because of what it meant. We started talking about, this is right around the same time as the Charter Authorizer bill started to peek through the window, and it became extremely important, and that we understand what losing control of our local schools would mean to our students. I encourage all of my board members to go to the website, which is localschoolslocaldecisions.net, read about this campaign, find out what it is that we can do as a board, and send this information to every single one of your fellow school board members in the state of Tennessee. I'll read you a couple of other things here. Why are local school boards necessary? Voters elect their fellow citizens to serve on school boards, and those boards make basic policy decisions about the school's direction and costs. Additionally, Tennessee law requires that those decisions must be made in open public meetings that give individual citizens an opportunity to participate. One of the things that is so critical to this board and every other school board in the state of Tennessee and across the country is that we live in our districts. Every one of us here live in our districts, and we know our community and we know our constituents. Therefore, we know what decisions should be and shouldn't be made. You take the control out of the hands of local boards, and you're giving it to a state or some other federal organization that may not know your neighbor, may not know your neighbor's children, may not know how the PTA meeting went last week, may not understand how important it is for a school board member to attend a community meeting. It is extremely vital that we continue to have a local control in our local schools. I encourage each of my board members to do your part in getting this message out as often as possible. Again, if you go to the website, it will give you more information on this campaign and what it means for us as a state. One other thing, here's a really cool thing. There's a little contest going on that I think Davidson County is going to win. Because I've already decided that we're going to win. There's a photo contest. What you need to do is, if you support local schools, local decisions, you take a picture with this little fan or one of these little stickers on, and you submit it to the website. The great thing is, the winning school board in the state of Tennessee gets absolute free registration for the TSBA convention in October. We're going to have 9 free seats, that's all I'm saying. So get out there, get your pictures taken, let's get this thing going. But more importantly, check out this website, because it speaks a lot to what we do and why we do what we do. I think it's well worth sharing this information with as many people as you possibly can. So, and by the way, I know you can't really see this, but I want to share this with you. Our Dr. Register is already on the website, along with our board secretary, Cameo Bobo. They've already taken the pictures here. I think it's fantastic. So we've got some support for our program. So, and that actually concludes my report. And since we have now moved our announcements to the top of our agenda, we will move it down to Ms. Froh.
There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
You nailed it.